It is no exaggeration when I say that this is potentially the largest OTA in Marvel Snap history. That also may not matter in 2 weeks. Let's talk about all of that and why. And this is enough of an OTA that I'm actually going to be recommending some brand new decks at the end of this video. It's a big one. Let's get into it. Shang-Chi is the first of 8 different tech cards that are going to be changed today. Keep in mind, this might not be a permanent OTA. One of the big things about this is that tech is taking over. The technology in this system, all the Bastions and the Sparkies and Viv Visions are taking over to get rid of a lot of the tech cards this season, or at least for about 2 weeks, and then the second dinner will reevaluate from there. We can go into more details as we continue talking through this video, but the first card that we will obviously be talking about here is Shang-Chi, going from a 4-3 to a 4-2, which also now only destroys a singular enemy card that has 10 or more power. Now, that's going to be a random enemy card that has 10 or more power, not going to be the highest powered of them. It's not going to be the lowest power, the first card, whatever. It's just random. It is a random card that has 10 or more power, and that's the one that's going away. Which is a pretty big change from Shang-Chi's current version, or previous version, I guess, which he's a 4-3 that destroys all 10 cost cards in his location. Now, second dinner, aka the robots that are taking this week's OTA over, which is, I will say, I do love the thematics, they had fun with this OTA, which I'm glad. They say that Shang-Chi has done 2 things that they potentially aren't okay with. First of all, it has exceeded standard play rate threshold, and this is echoed by public trackers, which consistently show that Shang-Chi is one of the best cards in terms of play rate, and it also has restricted deployment of multiple 10 plus power units in singular locations. So it wouldn't be a typical thing. People would be putting a lot of 10 cost or 10 powered cards in a single location due to the existence of Shang-Chi and his ability, or his previous ability, to destroy multiple cards that have 10 or more power. Now, this is a really big shift, obviously, to start us off here, and this is going to be fun. Now, I'm someone who said in the past that I do not enjoy Shang-Chi. I don't enjoy a lot of tech cards, and I'll go into the specifics of each and every card that we're going to be hitting here as we go through this video. And starting with Shang-Chi, this is one that I do like. I think that the game hopefully will be fine here, and this is, again, second dinner's going to evaluate, see how this goes through, and one of the biggest things that they would like to iterate is this may not be a permanent change. A lot of these abilities, a lot of these changes, they are going to exist for 2 weeks, and then they may go back. They may get undone immediately following. Some of them may exist. They may not completely revert them. They are uncertain. This is them basically doing an imbalance patch for those of you who remember those, which I honestly think is pretty cool. I think it's a really fun thing to bring back, and it's going to be really interesting 2 weeks. And I don't mind Shang-Chi taking the first hit here. I think that Shang-Chi's just been too good for a while. Now, I will say that I think a lot of other pro players have actually argued that Shang-Chi's pretty weak and not really an amazing card, but also it still has a very high play rate, and up until now, Second Dinner has said that a lot of cards are kind of balanced or existing on Shang-Chi. That's one of the reasons why he hasn't gotten nerfed. They've talked about that repeatedly in numerous bits of the Team Answers bit in their Discord. So Shang-Chi taking this hit here is going to be a really interesting thing, already showing that one of the cards where they have been previously fine with basically being a pillar in Marvel Snap, holding together potentially the game, they're already knocking it loose and saying that this card is going to be a lot worse. One of the biggest things I will point out with it, though, is that they aren't increasing the cost of this. And you may not think that's a big deal, but as we get to some of the later cards, a lot of tech cards that are kind of just existing are getting their cost increased as well. And Shang-Chi isn't. He's only taking, the biggest thing is that he's only taking a big hit in his ability, but it is a pretty big hit. The fact that now you can stack up multiple 10 powered cards behind him is going to matter a lot. And I'm excited to see where it goes. I think this is going to be a really fun one. And one of the things I will say, and I'm going to continue reiterating throughout this bit, is that I'm actually going to go through at the end of this whole thing, and we're going to talk about a few of the decks I think are going to be really good following this OTA. But anyway, Shang-Chi, I like it, but we'll have to see how the meta shakes up. Killmonger is going to be the second tech card taking a hit. And just like Shang-Chi, it's not taking a hit in its cost, and it's also not even taking a hit in its power. It's taking a pretty big hit, however, in its ability. Killmonger is a card that I have said repeatedly, if it ever got added to the game nowadays, players would be rioting and complaining that all of the one-cost cards in their zoo decks are getting destroyed. However, due to his new change, which only destroys cards at his location, both sides of the board still, that's going to be a different story. And I don't know how I feel about this one. A lot of these changes, I'm actually more in favor of, more on the side of, yeah, I like this. Killmonger's the only one that I actually don't know if I like this change, even if it is a tech card, simply due to the fact that this card really is a great way to potentially get your Deadpools and your, as we now have, Moira X's or X-23s and destroy them no matter where you play Killmonger. It's actually a really great piece in order to be able to play a card into a different lane and then still get some benefits in your destroyed deck. However, this is now going to be a card that only affects its lane, and this is a really big change. This is the one that I don't know if I love. Now, one of the things that is noted is the fact that the small units kind of just need protection at this point. Kaera was released a while ago and hasn't seen enough metagame viability, even if she has a 3-4 style line, which is pretty arguably good, doesn't matter enough. And now that it's going to be only, Killmonger's only going to be targeting its lane, it does mean that decks like Zoo might be able to do a lot more than they had in the past. This is going to be a really interesting change, particularly, and it's probably the one, I think, out of every single one of these changes that we're going to talk about today that I think I'm in the least favor of. But I do, again, appreciate the fact that Second Editor is willing to look at this card, potentially tweak it around. If anything, I kind of feel like, without seeing any gameplay, obviously, really, I kind of wish that this would actually be a change where it said, hey, this can destroy your cards everywhere, but maybe only your opponent's cards here. Maybe that's an equal balancing thing. Maybe it's still not good, but I do kind of like the idea that they are willing to look at some of these other cards here. But also, I think that Killmonger is maybe not my favorite card to get targeted, as, spoiler alert, some of the newer cards like Stardust or Cosmic Ghost Rider aren't getting changed. And I don't know why Killmonger is more of an issue instead of them. I don't know. So I like this one in maybe the smallest scale, but this one doesn't feel like this should have been a tech card that was as beneficial to put down for a couple of weeks as much as, again, Cosmic Ghost Rider and maybe Stardust. But let's keep going through these lists because I do like some of the upcoming changes, just like Enchantress. The next of these cards that are going to be tweaked and changed is Enchantress. Now, Enchantress is actually a card that's a little bit interesting of a hit. And one of the things Second Editor notes with her is that she's old. She's an old card. This is a simple solution to the ongoing problems. And we have more options nowadays. We have a lot more cards that would actually counter ongoings. So Enchantress is not really interesting. And so they're saying, okay, well, what if we have a card that it still can do some proactive stuff? Maybe we have that Rogue. Maybe we have Red Guardian. Maybe we have Cosmic Ghost Rider. But then also, Enchantress is just like the catch-all be-all for everything there, making it a lot harder to use. So it's interesting. This is the one I think that will probably get the least play in its new stat line. As it's a 5 cost and 8 power, I don't know how much we're going to be able to see with this card, as it's a pretty big investment going from a 4 cost to a 5. For one, 4 cost cards are kind of 3.5 due to the existence of both Zabu and Sarah, not even mentioning Surge and Mr. Fantastic First Steps, although only one of those cards is actually real. This is interesting. I don't know if I like this change, but I do think it's going to be another good one, and this goes into the same theming that Second Editor is talking about with everything else. They want to see what the metagame looks like for a couple of weeks. Maybe this gets reverted. Maybe it's not a full reversal. But I do think as a 5/8, it probably will still be fine. I just don't know if it's going to be good. Just, it'll exist, I guess. I guess that's fair. They even say that they want to remove tech soup decks, which I will say Enchantress is going to be a big hitter in. So I do like that bit. But again, I don't know. Enchantress, I don't feel like we've seen much of her recently. And I feel like I've seen personally or anecdotally more of, again, Cosmic Ghost Rider or Stardust. And those are also remaining the same. Also, Mobius isn't getting changed, but Enchantress is. I don't know. The nerfs don't stop coming, and they keep on coming, and the nerfs don't stop coming. Wait, no, I'm not singing the song. All-Star, Smash Mouth. And that's why Shadow King is getting his mouth I don't know. No, I don't. He's a 3/3 now. He's going to a 3/3 3 cost, 3 power. And Second Dinner specifically notes that it's just fun to boost the power of your cards to get really big numbers. Cards like Angela have been all but forgotten from the metagame, akin to also Surtur things, because Shadow King is just such an easy card to slot into decks at a 2 cost. And they specifically say that Shadow King is too efficient to affect so many other units, it's gonna get changed. One of the also other things they note is that boosting as a keyword might be efficient and clear, and maybe that might mean that we might get some cards working that way. But I'm looking at Gilgamesh, who, fun fact, Gilgamesh doesn't actually count any cards that have been debuffed and then buffed. It only counts the cards that are currently buffed. So if you have a card at a -3 power location, I don't remember that one, I think it's negative zone. If you have a card over there that's actually gotten +2 power, it wouldn't actually track it, or even +3. It wouldn't track it unless the card is above its base power showing on the board, which is a weird thing. So if they do boosted for that, that'd be cool. Sorry, that's a completely aside thing. But I think this is actually one of the more interesting changes that we have from Second Dinner here, as I do believe back in April of 2023, they actually brought this card down to a 3 cost from its actual release stats as a 4/3, which is an insane combination, by the way. I forgot that Shadow King released at a 4 cost with a 3 power stat line, and now they're bringing it back way back 2 years ago to this 3 cost, 3 power stat line. I don't know how this is going to go. This is the one that I feel like we might actually not see any changes with. The biggest reason is that I actually think as a 3 cost card, it might be just as playable. I don't know. I might be entirely wrong here, but as we have a lot more cards that are trying to ramp up in terms of power with Angela, with Surtur, and both those cards have actually fallen out of the meta, does this mean this is a chance for them to come back? Does this mean that Shadow King is actually okay? If I were to make predictions, make any guesses, this is one that I might be like, this actually might just be a real change. This might just be a legitimate change to Shadow King, and I don't think I hate that. But I also don't hate this change to Negasonic Teenage Warhead, which they do note, by the way, that Negasonic actually isn't even a real word. Negasonic, Mrs. or Miss Teenage Warhead, going from a 3/3 to a 4/5. Again, no changes in terms of the actual ability, but the stats for it is going to be changing pretty heavily here, kind of getting similar treatment to what we saw with Juggernaut. This is another one that I think might be a legitimate change. Second Dinner notes that beyond, of course, Negasonic not being a real word, it is just a very destructive card. It's just very efficient, and this is one of the ones they even point out as saying they want to discourage its use. Which again, that's kind of the point of a lot of these changes, right? To discourage the use of some of these main tech cards and see how the meta shakes up in the coming weeks. And I think that this is a fair one to go for as well, as we've seen Juggernaut happily exist at his 4 cost, 5 power stat line, and Second Dinner's even been taking crack shots at tech cards for a couple of weeks now, or a couple of OTAs now, trying to bring a lot more of them down in order to reduce the amount of tech soup, which is actually noted at points during their initial talk through of just all these changes. Negasonic is another fair one. I think Negasonic makes a lot of sense here, and this is one that I think probably has a little bit of staying power. It might need to go to a higher stat line, maybe a 4/6, but it does, I think, make a lot of sense for Negasonic to probably get reduced in power or I guess reduced in cost or increased in cost and power. I don't know. It's a bad thing nonetheless. As you'll notice, by the way, I'm not doing anything specific with like every single one of them is going to be just red. They're all red because every single one of these I'm just counting as nerf. These are all a bunch of nerfs, even if they are technically buffing powers or whatever. They're nerfing a lot of tech cards. And I think this is going to be a really interesting couple of weeks. Because of that, I think that the meta's gonna be really different. There's a lot more cards and a lot more decks that are very combo heavy. And as we saw with High Voltage a couple, I think it was last month, without a lot of tech cards, the metagame still flourished. We still had a lot of really interesting stuff. And so this is the closest I think Second Dinner's ever done to basically putting a ban on cards. And it's not even a ban, you can still play them. Their effect, it's just gonna be harder to use them. So I'm interested in seeing how playable, how much of these cards are gonna be occurring. And Negasonic is one of the ones that I think we could still see a good amount of. Honestly, one of the places I'm personally thinking is that Cerebro's been a pretty good deck. Cerebro 5 with Negasonic may not be the worst thing in the entire world, but that's not the only list. They are talking about the threats. They're talking about the scary stuff in Marvel and in Marvel Snap, and there's a multiversal threat in Alioth. Now, this is fun. I'm going to read directly from what they wrote here, is that the void of the Alioth unit can consume matter, time, and even fun. Its power must be tightly controlled, and the developers have exercised inadequate caution. It does not need this much power to function. We will protect you. Which, kind of like this one. This is another one. A lot of these I think are fair. There's a lot of these that I'm like, okay, this could actually just be a legitimate change. I think I'm like 50-50 between all these different tech cards, right? Where like some of them I don't think can probably exist at their new way. I think Killmonger's one I'm really looking at, as well as one of the other ones we're going to talk about here in a second. And then cards like Alioth and also Shadow King. I think these are also a couple cards where I'm like, does this really kill the card? You can't increase Alioth to bring it to a 7 cost. I don't think you can do that in the slightest. But as a 6/6, I think it's pretty fair. It's going to remove all the text still. It doesn't have any changes in the abilities. It's just going to be another really big statted thing, and it kind of forces you to be winning more so than you were in the past. And this is actually pretty similar if you remember back in the day when Alioth actually first got released. When Alioth got released, it actually had a stat line that I believe was 6/5, if I'm not mistaken, but it actually still, at that point, destroyed all enemy cards here, including the unrevealed cards, which, oh my gosh, they're saying Alioth can be a 6/6, even maybe for temporarily, and we still had a 6/5 Alioth that destroyed all enemy cards played here this turn. God, anyway. This is a good change in my opinion. I don't know, I don't think Alioth is a really fun card. I think this is going to probably be a very good way just to pull it back. I don't want a lot of this card. I don't think this card should be in a lot of different places. I liked it in a couple of specific decks. I think the one deck that I think it was kind of fine in were Supergiant decks. Were Supergiant with the Alioth card, Alioth unit, I think as they said it in the OTA notes. It made sense there, and I don't like it in just general places. So, I don't know. This is one that I'm fine with, and if they said this was just an actual change, probably wouldn't be complaining. The only other thing here is that this is only one of 2 higher series cards that we're actually seeing change in this OTA, which again feels a little bit strange to me. I don't know, that feels like there's a few other tech cards that are, again, higher series, but also aren't really getting hit, maybe because they're newer cards, but we'll see what happens. There is another Snap content creator who goes by Perry Manilow, who I know for a fact he hated Red Guardian when Red Guardian was a 3/3 and in a lot of different places. And it got nerfed to a 3/2. He was pretty happy as he just enjoys discard. He enjoys the stuff that Bullseye and Dracula can do, and Red Guardian stopped a lot of those cards. It also stops a lot of the activate cards that we do have getting released this month. And Red Guardian is another, is going to be taking a pretty big hit here, going from a 3/2 to a 3/0. This is one they even say, like, hey, this might go back to its power in a future OTA. I don't know what the requirement of the sponsorship documentation from 5 or more teammates means. Is this a reference to the Thunderbolts move? I think it might be that. I don't know. Honestly, I just don't know enough stuff about that thing, or maybe it's just a random bit of flavor text. Y'all can let me know. Either way, though, I do think that this is a pretty good change. I think that this is going to be very solid in terms of what we're going to be seeing. And again, this is I think one of the more beneficial cards inside of the tech slop decks that I think are going to be a lot worse with Red Guardian at a 3/0. I don't know how much this will get played, and I think this is one that might actually get some of the most play at its different stat line, simply due to the fact that even if you lose only 2 power off of this card, I actually still think that the ability is pretty solid. I'm feeling that the Ajax Affliction lists will still enjoy this card, but it probably won't be as good inside of the Tech Soup decks. And I think that's the biggest change that Second Dinner's trying to do here. What if Tech Soup decks didn't exist for a couple weeks? What does the meta look like? I don't know. I've asked, I think, and I've heard other people ask for saying, hey, can we just have all tech cards nerfed for a couple of weeks? Just try it out. And Second Dinner heard, and they're delivering. And this is one that I'm like, okay, sure, this is probably not gonna make a difference, but I love the idea, and I'm excited to see how this changes in the next couple of weeks. I like it. Now this one did make me chuckle, as the computers, the tech behind the scenes of this season said, "Dog detected. We do not like dogs. It will be changed." And then they also specified that apparently Sparky was chill, though. I don't know. Sparky's enough of a synthezoid, I think, that they're chill with. They're chill with Sparky being at a 2-1, which also, honestly, Sparky could maybe get a hit. Anyway, it's not Sparky isn't a tech card, but Cosmo is. So Cosmo is going to a 3 from a 3/3 to a 4/6, which is pretty big deal, honestly. I don't know how this one's gonna go. This is one that I kind of feel a little bit worse about. I don't know if Sparky needed to be a 4-cost card. I kind of understand, or sorry, if Cosmo needs to be a 4-cost card. I understand why you might want to do this. Again, this is another solid tech card, honestly, in terms of just saying like, hey, this shuts your opponent down from doing any on reveals, especially in places like high voltage. This card was legitimately just kind of kicked out of the last one as well because they wanted people to do more big things. So we'll see how well this one matters, how much this is going to make a difference. And again, it's still technically playable. Maybe there's going to be a version of decks that still want to use it. I don't know. This one I'm kind of like less sold on. I think I'm okay with Sparky. Cosmo taking a hit. I'm getting my dogs confused. But I just think this is a little bit too much. I don't know. Y'all let me know what you think about all of these changes to these cards, because in the end, I don't know if... I think I'm okay with some of them more than others. And this is what Second Dinner wanted to go for, right? They said, please let us, they said, you may submit your feedback on these. I think what they're saying, which to be fair, they're doing the flavor stuff, right? Of the tech cards taking over, the tech pieces, whatever, synthezoids taking over, robots over. They're saying you may submit the feedback and they will evaluate the metagame again in 2 weeks. More changes will be made and some will be reversed. So they also say that the human developers will be allowed to participate. So this is the end of the test run of OTAs, right? They're testing all of the tech cards, basically just taking a big hit here and seeing what the metagame's gonna look like. So in general, I think I'm okay with the idea of this OTA. And again, I feel like this is potentially a monkey's paw thing, right? The monkey paw where you wish like, hey, give me 2 weeks where Second Dinner just basically nerfs a bunch of tech cards and then we can see what the metagame looks like. And I'm really wondering if that monkey paw curling thing is about to be really rough. I don't know. I'm excited to see what these next 2 weeks look like in terms of what type of combo deck's going to be really interesting, what's going to be the best way people are going to be playing the game, how many of these tech cards are still going to be seeing play, I think is the #1 question that's actually on my mind here. How many of them are going to be used still to just not being touched at all? I'm excited about that and I'm very interested in it, but we now have a metagame that's basically saying, hey, let's build up a lot of combos, let's build up a lot of really big things. So I'm going to recommend 6, by the way. I was originally with 4, I got to 5, and then I got to 6 different decks that I'm like, okay, hold up. These decks might be real post-OTA. With these changes and everything, we might have a legitimate brand new metagame coming up where all of these decks are actually pretty solid, really interesting, and I wanted to show them to y'all right now. Now, this is a deck that I don't know if many of you have actually seen around on ladder. The whole point of this is that you can use your Esme and your Jubilee and your Wiccan, and you're just going to be comboing with your Sarah Onslaught Tribunal, and that's your basic way to just get those 4 cards, and that's it. Again, you're trying to use Esme and Jubilee to try to ramp those cards out sooner. You've got your Quicksilver Domino to try to give you consistency for your other cards, and Magic to give you that extra turn for the game. So this is one I think is going to be pretty interesting, pretty potentially cool, and you also have your Misery to re-trigger your Jubilee, your Ancient One, your Wiccan, Esme, I don't know, all these different cards, just potentially trying to see what they can do. This is one that I think I'm pretty excited about, and I'm pretty interested in. And in terms of for what it's worth, higher series cards, if you don't have Living Tribunal, I do believe Living Tribunal is a card that you probably cannot not be using. I believe it's the correct phrase of that. In addition, I do think that Wiccan is another card, especially in this particular list. I think you can't really substitute out. Similarly for Magic, an Ancient one as well. And then Misery, maybe you can actually substitute at 4. I don't know what the easiest substitution would be, but maybe it would just go for something akin to, I guess, Odin. Maybe you could just try to go with the Grandmaster. But Mystique's also another card you can be trying to mess with in this list. But yeah, so this is one of the first decks I think will be pretty fun post-OTA. The second one I think is going to be pretty solid post-OTA is Dakin Discard. Dakin Discard is actually a really solid deck, and it's a deck I haven't seen many people talking about or playing a lot. So why not try to mess with Bastion in here as well, one of the brand new cards. Bastion, for what it's worth, you could easily swap out probably with a Moon Girl. I think Moon Girl is going to be pretty interesting. This is one that actually was taken, I believe, by Shang Enjoyer into the latest qualifiers of the Golden Gauntlet. Hey, I'm familiar with that, by the way. Anyway, if you don't have Dakin or Bullseye, you do need them for this deck to be in any way, shape, or form competitive. I also think that there's a good chance you probably don't need Grandmaster, and you maybe even want a Scorn in here as well, because this deck does not currently run Scorn. And you do have Proxima in addition, and if you don't have Proxima, you could just try to sub in maybe a Colleen Wing instead, but again, you're losing, I think, the value of the Proxima. And legitimately, with Proxima, that may mean a reason why you may actually want Moon Girl in this list instead. And if you don't have Frigga, Moon Girl is just probably the answer there. If you are missing a couple of those, that's probably where I'd be going for in this stuff. But this is another one that's going to be putting down a lot of points of power. You can get a lot of stuff going on with just these few cards. The only card that was hit in Cerebro 2 was, if I'm not mistaken, it's just Shadow King. So Cerebro 2 is going to be insane. And it also actually runs a decent amount of tech. I would honestly consider Storm to be a piece of tech. I'd also consider Goose to be another pretty good piece of tech. Both of them control where your opponent's going to go. And I think ongoing stuff like Tribunal are going to be pretty solid in a lot of different places. So why not also throw Echo in here, which is already in some versions of Cerebro 2. This just feels like another really good deck that I think will probably put out a lot of stats, a lot of points in the upcoming, I guess, what's called Fortnite, I guess, technically. I don't mean the game, but, you know, Fortnite's a 2-week period. So I guess this is a fortnight of no tech cards. Anyway, if you don't have some of these cards, Mercury is a card that would probably be substituted out for I'd probably just go with a Nightcrawler. Lasher, a lot of these, y'all, it's a 2 cost, it's just 2 power. 2 power cards, use 2 power cards. It's Lasher and Ravonna. Choose a different 2 power card that will fit. You can try Shang-Chi, by the way. I don't think it'll be good, but that is one if you want to be weird. You can maybe try that. In a world without tech, why not at least try to mess with your opponent's cards and move them around? And that's what Scream does. Without any cards like Red Guardian to shut down your stuff, without Cosmos and Eliaths stopping everything from getting triggered or being moved, why not try to mess with some Scream? And I think that's a real shout. I think there's a lot of fun stuff. Scream and Shout, let it all out. Sorry. Cannonball's still, even though he's now a 5/6, I think he's still going to be completely fine. I don't have any issue with that. And then if you don't have, for what it's worth, Scream, the deck does just change up entirely, and that's probably going to be okay. Also, Killmonger isn't a thing as much, so Batroc can probably jump out of wherever Killmonger is going to get played. There's a lot of really good stuff here. The worst part of it is that Mobius isn't getting hit here, so there's a chance that your Miles Morales may still cost 4. Other than that, have fun. Like I said, Mobius isn't getting hit, so he makes sense to be put into this Thanos Scar list that I think is just going to be able to put down a lot of points here. You obviously have your Strange Supreme as well, which is a card I don't know how good it's been due to the fact that, again, Shadow King's just been in a lot of different places and just resets it entirely. Same thing with Surtur. So if they're both getting hit here and Cosmo's going to that 4-cost slot, I think this is potentially a really fun deck to be able to use. Surge obviously is just a great way to ramp out cards. And Sam Wilson's goal in this deck is obviously just to have that shield pretty much in order so that Strange Supreme can eat it very quickly. You can sometimes also get Sam Wilson to at least 4 points power, making it a 2/4. Definitely worth it, stat line. Lots of really fun stuff. Obviously, Scar is a cool card. This is a deck that I haven't seen in a hot second, and I think has the potential to come back in this latest OTA. Also, if you don't have Thanos, you can't run this. If you don't have Mockingbird, don't run this. There's a lot of cards here with higher series bits, and I'm going to be honest with you. I think the only 2 you could maybe swap would be Sam Wilson for Rhino and then Surge for maybe a Psylocke. Otherwise, you really want those higher series cards. That's about it. Last, but in honestly my opinion, least in terms of my favorite, Clog. Now, I mean, nothing in the Clog package is getting hurt. Again, the worst one is just going to be Shadow King because it's just been able to be run as an efficient 2-cost card. And now I don't think it's as good. So this is just a really good pile of cards. And why not just try to fill up your opponent's entire board, right? If you don't have tech cards anymore, why not just fill up their side? And if you don't have a few of these cards like Galactus First Steps, Red Hulk, or just another way to ramp out cards will be pretty solid here. You could also try to mess with, instead of Kate Bishop and... Actually, Kate Bishop and Merlin, I'd probably say are more irreplaceable due to the fact that they both just offer you extra pieces, and those additional cards they give are pretty nice. Debris can't be stopped, by the way. Maybe this is why Stardust is not banned. This deck might be why Stardust is not banned. I don't know. And then also, if you don't have Cannonball, I guess you could try Shang-Chi, but then I do think that you probably shouldn't be running this list if you don't have Cannonball and Mercury. I hope you enjoy these next 2 weeks. Let me know down below if you made it to the end of the video, for 1, and for 2, let me know what you think of this OTA, because I'm interested, I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm definitely scared and also excited. So we'll see how the next 2 weeks look in terms of Marvel Snap's metagame. But until then, have a good one, have a great one, and bye. What was that?